Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. I'm really excited to share this one with you guys today. I'm going to be showing you guys 4 different artisan bread recipes. If you don't know yet, I recently got a Dutch oven and I have just been loving using it, and I have been making so many different things in it, so I thought might as well make Dutch oven artisan bread. But all 4 of these recipes are very, very different, and you will see that in a minute. But I hope you guys all enjoy it, and if you are new here, I'd love to have you over at my channel, so go ahead and subscribe down below the video. But let's get on to making some artisan bread. To get us started off first, we're going to start with this Dutch oven no-knead crusty bread, I guess you could call it. It's kind of like a French bread. So into my bowl, I'm just going to be adding my water. All it is a cup and a half of some warm water. And then next I'm adding about 2 1/4 tablespoons of some yeast. This is just some active dry yeast. You could also just use a packet. Now you're just going to be adding about 1/2 tablespoon of some sea salt. Then you're just going to let this rest for about 10 minutes to activate this yeast. Like I said before, all of these recipes are very different. This recipe in particular is kind of like the most simple recipe. So this recipe only had to rise for about 2 hours. But anyways, now after that yeast is activated, I'm just going to be adding my 3 1/4 cup of flour, and I just am going to stir this until it gets nice and sticky and into a ball. Here is kind of like a fun tip for you guys. So whenever I'm trying to get dough off of the back of my wooden spoon, I always use a spatula, and it's just the easiest and you don't have to have messy hands. But I'm just going to let this rise in a warm place for about 2 hours. Now that my bread is done proofing, I'm just going to be flouring my surface and then rolling out my dough on there. This step might confuse some of you guys. So this is kind of the same for all of these different recipes, but I just preheated my oven to 450 degrees and I let my Dutch oven preheat along with my oven. So you're going to have your Dutch oven very hot once you are ready to put your bread in it. So that might confuse some of you, and you know, that's just how it has to be. But now once my bread is nice in a little ball like that, I did cut some slits in the center of it just to make it look pretty. I guess you don't really have to cut any slits in your bread, but it is going to make it look prettier in the end. But then I just plopped it into my Dutch oven, put the lid on, and put it into the oven to bake. Okay, you guys, here it is out of the oven. This is actually my first time ever making artisan bread with this one, and I thought it turned out amazing. So if this is your first time ever making artisan bread in your Dutch oven, go ahead and give this recipe a shot. It's kind of fail-proof in my opinion because it just turned out so good. But this recipe was a total hit, like I said before. We just served it alongside of some dinner on that night. We also had it for breakfast with some butter the next morning, but the edges were totally crisp and soft in the middle. I just served it alongside of some Tuscan chicken and rice. For this artisan bread recipe, we are making Dutch oven chocolate chip bread. Yes, you heard that right. Chocolate chip. I know I love chocolate chips, and of course I had to add it to bread because you guys know me. But anyways, into my large bowl, I'm adding 4 1/2 cups of some bread flour. And yes, I said bread flour, not all-purpose flour. This recipe called for bread flour, and I think that's why it turned out so yummy. I'm also going to be adding 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt in there, along with my yeast. All this is a 1.5 teaspoons of some active dry yeast. And then the last thing I'm going to be adding after I stir this up is 2 1/4 cup of warm water. You want it around 105 to 115 degrees. And then once again, you are just going to give this a good old mixing. Once I am complete stirring this all together and it kind of turns into a ball once again, I'm going to put some cling wrap on top and I'm going to seal that pretty tight. One thing I wanted to let you guys know about, this one does have to rise for about 8 to 18 hours. Okay, I know a lot of people don't have patience for that, me being one. I just really don't have patience for that, but this is worth it. I let it raise for about 18 hours and it was worth the wait. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so here we are, finally 18 hours later, and our dough has risen up very nicely. So now I'm just going to be adding in our cup of some semi-sweet chocolate chips, followed by our 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and then you're finally just going to be mixing this all together. I started using my, spatula, and then I realized my hands would just be a very, very good tool for this, so I just used my hands. And then you're just pretty much wanting to get that dough incorporated with the chocolate chips and cinnamon. Once again, to a parchment paper lined surface, I just sprinkled a little bit of some all-purpose flour on top, and then I just plopped my dough right on top there and I rolled it into a ball. I did turn my oven to 450 degrees at this point, and I did place the Dutch oven in there to warm up once again. I also just let this dough sit for about 20 minutes before putting it into the oven. Here I am once again doing a little X on my bread. In my opinion, doing the X on top of the bread makes it super, super pretty, and it's like the easiest possible thing you could do on top of a bread, and I just think it turns out so nice. Okay, so this chocolate chip cinnamon bread was amazing. This was a great little afternoon pick-me-up. This just tasted so good. It was great for breakfast, of course. I don't know about you guys, but I think you really need to try this one because it is just that delicious, and the outside crustiness is just bakery status. It is just so good, and it's so easy to make. Here we are making some cinnamon raisin bread. This one was actually my family's favorite recipe, so I'm excited to share it with you. Once again, we're starting with our flour. So this is 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm just putting in this large glass bowl. Along with my raisins, we're adding 1 cup of raisins, and then my yeast, a half a teaspoon of some active dry yeast, along with my salt. This is just a teaspoon and a half of some salt. And then you're going to be adding 3 teaspoons of your cinnamon. And then this part is a little bit weird, I guess you could say, but it adds so much flavor. You're going to be adding a half a teaspoon of ground ginger, along with 1/4 teaspoon of some cloves. And then the very last thing you're going to be adding is 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, and then 1.5 cups of some water at room temperature. Here you see me adding about 1 tablespoon more of some all-purpose flour. I did think the dough was a little bit too sticky at this point. I think it needed a little bit more flour, so that's what I did. If you think your dough needs more flour, go ahead and add some. But just like before, I'm just adding some cling wrap to this, and I'm letting this one rise for about 18 hours as well. This one is also worth the wait. This raisin bread is a little bit different, so after I did make it into a little bit of a ball like this, I put a kitchen towel over it, and I let this one rise again for 20 more minutes. This one speaks for itself. This raisin cinnamon bread is so good. And all of these recipes are just so simple. I really couldn't believe it while I was making them. They really impressed me. So if you're intimidated, really don't be. I think you could do it. But this one was so good. I put some butter pats on top and called it good. To all of my whole wheat bread lovers out there, this recipe is for you. We're starting this recipe very similar to the last 3 recipes. So into my large glass bowl, I'm just adding 2 cups of some warm water along with 3 3/4 cup of whole wheat flour. Yep, whole wheat flour. This is whole wheat bread. And then I'm going to be adding in 2 teaspoons of salt and then 1 teaspoon of yeast. Yet again, I'm just going to stir this until it forms into a ball. This recipe was extremely vague on how long they said to let it rise for. It said to let it rise for overnight, so I honestly just let it rise for about 18 hours along with the other breads. So that's kind of what I did. So here we are 18 hours later onto the floured surface yet again. I'm just going to be rolling out our dough into a ball. One thing I didn't mention to you before is when I plopped that dough into the Dutch oven on the parchment paper, I kind of just ripped off the excess parchment paper so it sat in there just a little bit better. That's kind of like my personal tip. But I'm just cutting this whole wheat loaf with little lines this time. I did not do my traditional X. Here is my whole wheat bread out of the oven. This one definitely was not dry. It was so good. Sometimes I feel like whole wheat bread is a little bit too dry, but this recipe did come out great. The way we ate this actually was with some grilled cheese sandwiches. We made these into grilled cheeses for lunch and everybody enjoyed it. Here is the very last part. I wanted to show you guys my adorable parents and my younger sister. So they're just enjoying the bread. They absolutely devoured it. It was the funniest thing ever. They're just so sweet. And that is a wrap of today's video. I hope you guys all enjoyed it and maybe you'll make some of these recipes. But anyways, if you are new here, I'd love to have you over at my channel. So go ahead and subscribe down below the video. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.